Hello, my name is Aaron Johnston, and my presentation is over penetration testing and ethical hacking. Penetration testing is a purposeful attempt to break into a network by either breaking, bypassing, or otherwise penetrating the defensive mechanisms that are in place, be they security policies, systems, or through other people. Ethical hacking is a term that can be used interchangeably with penetration testing, because they are similar in execution and identical in intent, although they are not quite the same thing. The main topics of this presentation will be the types of hackers that can be involved in both penetration testing and network security as a whole, why penetration testing should be incorporated into the current process of developing security mechanisms, and penetration testing's place in the development cycle of producing a security system and other security policies. The first thing that I'll cover are the types of hackers and a brief history of each type as well. The three most prevalent types of hackers are white hat or ethical hackers, which I'll be discussing the most, black hat or malicious hackers, which are what the common attackers to and threat to a network and security system, and gray hat hackers, which while they do share some traits of both the white and gray and black hats, they are a group of their own. White hat hackers are the ethical hackers that I will be referring to for the majority of this presentation. They operate entirely within the scope of the law and areas that their employers allow them to work. Their methods and tools are identical to those used by black hat hackers, and a large amount of those white hat hackers are former black hat hackers that have reformed themselves and are now applying their experiences into a more productive manner and line of work. While white hat hackers and ethical hacking is not a new concept, the term hacking did originate from this process, in a way. Hacking originally referred to the procedural improvement in both efficiency and quality of a network and security devices, and just devices in general. Around the time that computers and networks became more widespread and used in commercial areas such as businesses, homes, and other places, that was when the term hacking became muddied and eventually earned the more negative connotation that we think of it now. Ethical hackers did not disappear alongside the changing of the definition of hacking. It's rather that they were more overshadowed by black hat hackers and the media portrayal of what a hacker is in news and media. White hat hackers never disappeared, although with their resurgence with the ethical hacking becoming a more general accepted practice and facet of security development, it's less so that they've disappeared and came back, and more so that they're becoming more widely known. And the slides that I've just said, I'll just reiterating what I said. Okay, black hat hackers are another group which I have briefly addressed earlier, and these are the typical threats that a network will try to defend against, and also the type of hacker that most people think of when they think of a hacker in general. Their presence in a network security is that of the attackers that would pose a threat to a network, and are in fact the developers of many Trojan programs, viruses, and other forms of malware that would put a network under risk of being penetrated and the data being compromised. They work for either self-profit or to victimize the target network. And they are one of the most prevalent threats, if not the most dangerous ones, in network security. It's not only are they human with all the ability and adaptability that being a logically thinking and adaptable living being provides, but they also have the programs and tools that they've developed to assist them in breaking through the network. Now, while these tools are able to function on their own quite well, under the use of a skilled black hat hacker, they're able to be used to their fullest potential, and in a wide variety of ways in conjunction with other tools that might not ordinarily be possible. Logical vulnerabilities within a security system and policy are not the only vulnerability that are able to be targeted by black hat hackers. Human weaknesses, such as being fooled by a fake phone call, email, or possible negligence, or just common human error, just accidentally leaving a vulnerability exposed without ever intending to, are all possible vulnerabilities that a black hat hacker can take advantage of that might not always be able to be planned for in a security policy or system. This would also be another area that white hat hackers might not have the most control over, as they'll only be able to fully inspect the logical aspect of the network rather than the human aspect. Gray hat hackers have a more minor presence compared to the other two groups, but this does not mean that they are any less of a threat or as unimportant as the others. As one can already tell from their name, gray hat hackers are a bit of a mix between white hat and black hat hackers in that, while the actions that they do take are as illegal as black hat hackers and can be as self-motivated, there usually is no self-profit at the expense of the victim network and devices, or at least none intended. And oftentimes, they are done with morally sound reasoning, although maybe not morally just. While a black hat... Okay. They act in a similar manner that's most comparable to a vigilante, where they work outside of the law illegally like a vigilante or criminal or black hat hacker would, but they do so to either expose vulnerabilities in the eyes of both the owners of the network and the public, who might be falsely advertised a false sense of security. They might be working for their own reputations to improve for the sake of, say, bragging rights, or just a matter of getting the experience of saying that they did something. Or they could be doing so for a more noble goal where they're trying to expose ill-doing, wrongdoing, or as just a whistleblower on the behalf of another individual or company that is hiding some damaging information that they should not be a hold of. Some groups that would be referred to as gray hat hackers best would be anonymous, and for an individual example, Edward Snowden. Although there is a fair case that could be made that gray hat hackers are more closely aligned to, say, either black hats or white hats, when looking at them alone and even compared with the other two groups, there is enough differences between them to have them as a standalone group. Okay, why undergo penetration testing? Penetration testing provides several benefits to a network, which are both initial benefits and more long-term benefits, although these are not without their own concerns. The most immediate of these benefits are that a network is able to be reliably and realistically be tested to provide valuable feedback as to the condition of the current security policies and systems in place. This would be done in a far, far greater and more detailed extent than simple debugging could be done. Vulnerabilities that are present will be quickly identified by allowing an ethical hacker to look for such vulnerabilities over a designated period of time, ranging from hours, days, or even weeks, depending on how thorough you want them to be, and is quite vital in helping these vulnerabilities be weeded out through exposing them. Also, by using an ethical hacker to do this, a separation of duties will also be created, so that way the work of testing out the security system will not fall on the workload of either the developers of the security system or those tasked with implementing the system, thereby adding a bit more security by trusting more people with less work, or at least in the terms of creating the security system and all of that. The long-term benefits of penetration testing, outside of those immediate ones with some slight long-lasting conditions, is the increased security that would come from the removal of each vulnerability that has been exposed and has been also sent back to the developers to remove themselves. Human weakness can also be reduced to an extent by allowing the network administrator, engineers, and to a lesser extent, the employees working on said network, should such a test be permitted, of course. But anyways, the engineers and administrator would theoretically be able to look to see what the ethical hacker is doing and what kind of work they're doing on the network and how they're bypassing their systems. There could be two options that they use to grow from this experience. They could, one, look at the work being done by the ethical hacker to look for telltale signs of when their systems have been bypassed and when sensitive data is being accessed by a compromised source or a malicious attacker. And two, they can also have some experience trying to repel said attack by, well, repelling the attack firsthand, rather than just theorizing and practicing against a more unthinking approach. Now, some concerns about ethical hacking, which I feel should be addressed, are as follows. Trust, as briefly mentioned earlier, is an important feature of security. Being able to trust not only the system that you're working on, but the developers, the implementers, and the testers of the security system are all important in making sure that a security system is trustworthy, and thus the data being protected is as trustworthy as that. Now, while some might hesitate to hire a quote-unquote hacker to test their systems, this worry is largely unfounded for several reasons. One, the hacker would have to be beyond stupid to purposefully attack the network that they've been hired to test of their own free will outside of the work that they're being paid to do, as one of the logically first people to investigate should an attack go through and use the same vulnerabilities exposed by the ethical hacker would be said ethical hacker. Also would be that ethical hackers have a reputation amongst them, and that should an ethical hacker try even do anything, and I mean anything, to risk this trust that they have placed in them, their careers, their reputation, and their foreseeable financial gains through this line of work will all be ruined in an instant. And this is not including any fines or jail time that they would be facing for any illegal hacking measures taken on their behalf. Also would be the separation of duties that I've previously mentioned. As a separation of duties is almost demanded in the implementation and development of a security system to ensure that the developers or implementers do not have sole power over the security system, and thus they need to be the most trustworthy people imaginable to do the work. By hiring someone else to test the security features, you would be able to include another person who would increase the security of this system by distributing the duties and tasks that each person has been assigned to do, thus preventing all the power, authority, and knowledge of the system from being all in one person who could reliably or unreliably tell others what they know. And finally, the financial costs. Well, yes, it might be expensive to hire an ethical hacker, and depending on how you pay them, on either a per vulnerability and bugs exposed and corrected, or a salary, or a flat salary, the cost of one or several ethical hackers would far outweigh the financial and reputational cost of a security system breach and failure. As has happened several times within the past decade, a breach in the network that leads into a loss of both confidential company data and customer data would be within the millions of dollars range, and not only be costly in fines, but as well as the reputation of the company in how they are unable to protect their data, which would then reduce the number of people being able to trust doing business with said company. And finally, penetration systems' place in a network. As a whole, penetration testing would serve several roles in the development of a secure system. A practical test through penetration testing will provide far more data, information, and a more practical exercise of the capabilities of a security system and the policies that surround it. The practical test will also just be overall more effective than a theoretical test or a practice test done by debugging or the engineers who would be developing it and regularly testing every facet as they go. This test would also be a bit more effective, as unlike the defensive measures that would be more planned for from the administrators and engineers who are more tailored to defending rather than attacking, an ethical hacker has far more experience and practical knowledge and tools attacking a system than they do defending. As they have more experience attacking, it would be fair to say that they are more professionally experienced in this area, which it would make sense to hire an ethical hacker to test how well a system can be penetrated rather than how well it can be defended. This different perspective would also allow for new ideas in both defending the system from attackers and malware, as a perspective from both a defensive measure of how to prevent as many attacks as possible, and attacker's perspective of how to work around as many defensive mechanisms as possible, would allow for more defensive mechanisms to be in place, more redundant systems to be installed, and overall less security breaches to occur. And that is all I have to say about penetration testing and ethical hacking. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and I thank you dearly for bearing with me for this entire time. Thank you very much.